Ready? Play.
Hello, guys. Welcome to Iga Swiatek versus Caroline Garcia, Beijing quarterfinal. This is one of the 7 chosen women's matches of the year, um, as far as the 2023 season goes. And so, I guess since Damien and I are the hosts of the Iga and Carlos Tennis Show, it's fitting that we get to talk about this one, right, Damien?
Yeah, I think another reason is that I was advocating for this match in the shortlist Twitter space that we had, where me, John, and Jack basically sat down and just decided to cut the list to 7 on both the ATP and the WTA. This match was a bit of a point of contention, mostly because John didn't watch it. And basically, so we had me and Jack just saying, okay, this has to be in the top 7, and like pushing for it to be an automatic inclusion. So I cannot really say that John wasn't receptive to the idea. He was just like okay with it. Like, okay, if you guys are saying that, yeah. But I think the fact that we have it at number 7 is already something I'm not fully comfortable with. I think on that previous recording, I don't know if you'll quite understand what I mean by that, but on that Twitter space, I said that this is like no nonsense tennis, and especially comparing it to a few other matches that we included, where like the storyline maybe is the main factor. Here we're also going to find a lot of good storylines and narratives, especially relating to Świątek and like how she approached the match tactically, and for the rest of her season as well. But I think this is one where you just really just get insane quality start to finish. Both players just get out there. The rallies are super quick, and that's basically what I mean with like no nonsense tennis. There's no it is really flashy, but there's no whole like grandiose narrative, let's say, around it. It's just a really good match from first minute to the last.
Nice. Exquisite.
And I guess that's my favorite kind of tennis.
Yeah, and it's not very often in the women's game you see like you know a match like that where it's like not even no sniff of break points or break of serve for a whole set altogether. And that's what I like about this match, is that it was really zoned in. You could really zone in on a few key moments in each of the set, and those become like really really important, like extra extra importance on those key points, because the level was so high that there was just no room, and the margins were so slim. So I like that in a great match, and both players really brought it from mostly from start to finish. Even though the third set was 6-1, it definitely it was just a couple moments in there really that made the scoreline that one sided. But honestly, yeah, really important match. I think also narratively speaking about Iga's season, and also where Garcia was at that point. So yeah, it's good that you pushed for this match. I wasn't there for the Twitter Spaces, but I'm glad that you advocated for this one, because I would
I
have
think
done
it
the
was an
same for sure.
obvious one. I
Yeah.
see it thrown around on Twitter a lot. Like in the conversations about best matches of the year, I see it all the time, and I'm not surprised. I remember, after watching it, everyone was like talking about it and saying, "Oh wow, that was ridiculous," and maybe no, I don't know. Did we do like a commentary on it as well? Like I can't even
No,
remember at
no,
this point.
we did do commentary on the golf one. So the one
Ah, the
after.
the one the one the one the match after. So maybe that's why I remember, around that time. But certainly, I've seen it a lot, even this past week, in the conversations on tennis Twitter. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously John didn't watch it, so I understand why he wasn't like instantly thinking of it. But I think everyone really would have it in their top 7 if they watched it. So, yeah, I'm glad it's here, especially as it's not exactly like a Grand Slam final. It's still a WTA 1000, but it is a quarter. It's definitely a match that convinced people with its quality rather than the story first.
Yeah, for sure. But should we start building up the narrative a little bit, I
Yeah.
guess? Because I think at this point, we can start with Iga. I think, coming into this match, there was some concern from us sort of at the end of Tokyo, right? I remember us talking, and you know at this point she had won the French. She had reached the quarters of Wimbledon. She played that fighting match against Bencic in the fourth round, which we discussed at length. But then it didn't really carry over, and She lost a tight one to Svitolina in the next round, a match where she was up 5-3 30 love in the first set, and then it kind of all go it became a lot more complicated after that, basically. And then loses a tight one to Goff and Pegula in the summer, both three setters, and then obviously the Ostapenko loss at the U.S. Open and the Kudermetova lost in Tokyo. That's when we were like really concerned, because we kind of weren't seeing her problem solve and find different solutions when the opponent is playing really aggressive, taking the racket out of her hand, and she was trying to match pace for pace a lot of the times in these matches, and she wasn't thinking as clearly as we both knew that she could, but it just wasn't quite happening for her, in that way, and her confidence was a little bit shaken up. But immediately we saw a different version of Swiatek in Beijing. In the first three rounds, even though she was expected to win those three matches leading up to the quarterfinals, we thought, okay, the conditions are better for her here. It's a little bit slower, but also she just feels like she's timing the ball a lot better. She's thinking more clearly. The footwork looks better. She's serving better immediately. I think we both picked up on that. Um, even before the Garcia match, and that was going to be really key in this one, because Garcia was also coming in pretty good form. Uh, and she wasn't in great form the whole year, but she had managed to salvage a little bit of that after the U.S. Open by getting to the Guadalajara semifinal, which I think basically that's kind of what saved her year, and she finished in the top 20. But by getting to this match here, so basically in the two of the last three 1000s of the year, she managed to kind of save her year. And then for Swiatek at this point, Garcia was still a top 10 player, so she was number 10, and Swiatek was 6-6 against top 10 players coming into this match, and here she was 2 points away from losing this match. So it all could have been very different, if a couple things happened differently. So I think narratively, it's really important this match for her to come through a performance like this, right?
Yeah, I mean, around the US Open, Tokyo, this was probably the I guess maybe the worst part of Swiatek's season, just because how she played against Ostapenko and Kudermetova. Like, you could actually, point out that, yeah, she's trying to fight fire with fire. She's just absolutely blasting the ball and hoping to overhit them. Against Ostapenko already, it hasn't worked out a few times. And she's still doing the same against Kudermetova. Of course, previously she actually had such a good matchup, and then she loses to her in Tokyo. So yeah, there were real sort of points of concern at that time. Definitely, the word number one did not seem like a possibility anymore. Which
Yeah.
of course then she just managed to win every single match from Beijing onwards, which obviously changed that. But at that point, we thought that this battle with Sabalenka is probably done. And yeah, I mean, just when it comes to point construction, how there wasn't any at the US Open in Tokyo, where in Tokyo, of course, pretty fast, probably too fast for her liking, but still that was the low point probably. And to turn it so quickly into one of the highlights of the year, because I think both Beijing and the WTA finals are probably my favorite events of Swiatek's year, actually, in terms of
Yeah.
yeah, just from start to finish, playing very smart, approaching every match differently. We even saw that in the first few matches in Beijing, probably. You've got Sara Sorribes-Tormo, who, of course, sort of requires from you a certain amount of, let's say, yeah, just slowly building up the points. A lot of times she had to go to the net to finish it off, which also showed some sort of awareness and skill there as well, which some people don't think she haven't. I mean, even she has questioned it in the past. So I think that was already pretty big. Of course, then you get Gracheva and Linette, so it's not like the opposition was that huge. But I mean, even in Tokyo, she played this awful opening round against Hontama. So the jump was really clear, both the conditions, but also the tactical approach to the matches. So I guess Garcia was going to be the big test, and just maybe going backwards, like into the history of the rivalry. She has been a tough opponent for Swiatek, which is also kind of natural, because we've seen, especially when players can just jump onto her serve and destroy her on the return. We've seen her struggle with that, especially in 2022, perhaps, which is of course when the famous Warsaw match happened in the quarters on clay, and Garcia still just comes out and, well, I mean, it was 3 sets, but the parts of the match that Garcia was dominating, it was like absolutely scary. Honestly, one of my favorite experiences watching women's tennis live as well, for sure. That was a fantastic show, really, that Swiatek Garcia won. So we were aware that there could be issues with Garcia, and because the first 3 rounds were like against, let's say, lower caliber opposition, that was certainly going to be a test, and something that actually tells us quite a lot in regards to whether this spike of, let's say, thinking on the court can continue from Swiatek. And of course it did. And yeah, as you said, I mean, Garcia didn't really have a great year, but this late good patch, this late good reach vein of form was actually what allowed her to get to the top 20. So this was probably her at her strongest that year. Maybe this match, in fact, was Garcia at her strongest this year.
Yeah, I would probably argue it actually because I mean Garcia was showing that level in this match, mainly throughout. Like, and and what you said about Garcia, being a problem matchup for Iga. Just to go into a little more detail, why Garcia is a hyper aggressive player, right? She stands, near the service line and crushes second serve returns, but also first serve returns. She doesn't really have many other return positions. She doesn't like to vary it a whole lot, especially in the last couple of years, right? Because she's sort of like stuck to this one sort of return approach.
You're well known for your aggressive style, particularly on the return.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about maybe making adjustments, maybe taking a step back, or is it, you know what, all or nothing all the time?
Yeah, I think you're like years late. I mean, people keep asking me, but you're like a couple of years late asking that question.
Sorry, I'm a newbie.
You're a newbie, okay, me too. But yeah, I mean, it's the way I return the best. Like, you can try to put me 2 meters behind, but I don't know how to do it, and it can be a disaster. I will get ace if I'm on the baseline, and I will be even more aced if I'm 2 meters behind. So.
And she's gonna either try to follow it up into the net or just take the opponent's time away and then like come forward. And the good thing is she has good volleys and she's pretty adept and comfortable at finishing at net, so that helps her. But it's also a double-edged sword because sometimes if the server comes up with really good body serves, all of a sudden she's kind of trapped in no man's land and she doesn't have a whole lot of time to go back and defend. And then it becomes really harder to use her baseline tools, because I actually think she's a pretty decent mover. She's an okay mover, nothing like the caliber of Swiatek, but she just doesn't allow herself that chance a lot of times because sometimes it's all kind of in her hands, but she doesn't vary it. But against Swiatek, it's a very good play because you want to be on top of that second serve return as quick as you can. And it put a lot of pressure on Iga in this match to come up with good serves, come up with well-placed serves, come up with body serves, and just kind of think very clearly about what serve I have to hit next. And I saw Swiatek like kind of going through that, taking her time, and coming up with good decisions because she was forced to by Garcia's play. So I think that made it really challenging all throughout. But in the first set, actually, both players served really well. There were no break points for either player, and it basically went to a first set tiebreak. And like Swiatek, I mean, barely losing points on her serve, which, like, I mean, if I look at the set as a whole, she only lost 4 points on her serve in total, and she actually ended up losing this set. So that tells you how well Garcia was playing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just a matchup where usually Garcia controls everything. I mean, regardless of what's going to happen in a point, it's going to be short. It's going to be on her racket. Of course, that sometimes, as you said, I mean, she's just not capable, or at least she's not willing to change up that return position in any way. But well, if it's working fine, and certainly. Even though Swiatek lost she lost just 4 points on serve, I wouldn't say that was the main problem here for Garcia. The quality of Iga's serving definitely was at its highest towards the end of the year as well, maybe towards the very beginning also, but in Beijing specifically 100%. And as you said, the body serve has been such a useful tool in this matchup just because Garcia has very little time to move away from it. I mean, with the way she's standing, and it's really been hampering her ability to attack Swiatek. I agree that Garcia is actually not a bad mover at all. I think that's actually, in a way, that's often something that is actually really helping her in these matchups, because oftentimes when you play someone like this, like someone who's just hyper aggressive, plus the ball from both wings, they have some movement deficiencies that you can expose. And with Garcia, they're like pretty slim. Of course, she's not quite Coco Gauff or Iga Swiatek, but she can sustain herself in a 10-shot rally, no problem. And 10 shots, I mean, from her part, let's say 20-shot rally, no problem. So absolutely, she can pull off both, and it does make her a very scary player when she's on. obviously we haven't seen it all that much in 2022, but this match was, to me, on par with the Garcia that actually won this event before, right, in a few years earlier, and also with the Garcia that was basically peaking in the second half of 2022 in every single match she played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, except for the U.S. Open semi, but yeah, you're basically right. Yeah, but I guess in the first set tiebreak, I guess when we get down to the tiebreak, Garcia hits this amazing return to get a mini break up and go up 5-2 because she just kept holding from there, and there was not really much Iga could really do there because she came up with a pretty decent first serve, I thought, on that point at 1-2, and then Garcia just laces this forehand return right down the middle, right at Iga's feet, and basically like starves her of any time whatsoever. And so now you're thinking like, like this is probably the set gone. If it's 5-2, and then sort of from there, what ended up happening the rest of the tiebreak, it was quite back and forth. And yeah, so like, what were your thoughts when Garcia went up 5-2 in the beginning and got that early mini break?
Is it also
Were
the
you
tiebreak
thinking-
when
Were you thinking like, oh, the set's over, there's no real chance here, and just Iga probably has to hold on to these 2 points for sure. And at that point, it sort of felt like, even though Iga's been serving so well, just this one moment could swing it in Garcia's favor.
Yeah, I mean that's how you have to think about it against Garcia, right? I mean, she has such a massive serve. Of course, that didn't exactly end up happening, but well, I guess this is also a theme of this match. In the second set, we also have a huge lead in the tiebreak that, well, eventually gets capitalized on.
We'll get to that
in a way that we weren't really expecting. But yeah, we'll get there, obviously. But yeah, I mean, the first set tiebreak eventually turned out into just like a huge battle of nerves, lots of exciting points. I think there was a 6-5 set point that Swiatek saves with really reacting very well to the huge return that Garcia sends at her. So it was a really good fight back. It was a really good attempt, let's say, from Swiatek to get back into the set. Of course, she didn't manage to do it, but yeah, by the end it was just back and forth, and you couldn't really tell what was going to happen anymore at all.
Yeah, for sure. And even at 2-5 to hold on to those 2 points, because I remember Garcia coming forward on one of them, hitting a good return coming forward, but then Iga just sort of passes her, holds her ground, and then so the pressure was all on Garcia serving at 5-4, and then they actually got into a kind of a lengthier rally at 5-4, but then Swiatek like backhand cross just hits the net tape and then goes wide, so kind of unlucky there. But then at 6-5, yeah, you're totally right. Like, she just reacted so well, and was dealing with the pace, and they just had a really, really good point and ended in a forced error, and then all of a sudden 6-all, and then that's when you're like, okay, this is a total coin flip at 6-all. Like, don't know who's gonna take it, but they were having some really exciting rallies, and at that point, actually, Iga manages to get to set point, and then on the set point is probably one forehand that I thought, like that was kind of her chance, because she had a second serve and she kind of got into the rally, and then Garcia was totally on the defense, and it was one of those sort of heavy, Swiatek accelerating type forehands that she usually makes, and she ended up missing it, but that was just because the importance of the moment, and you barely only get one or two chances like that, and so then the pressure was on again, and it was 7-all, 8-all, and then it just came down. It just totally came down to the wire, and you just like this was one of the better tie breaks you'll see all season, just with the back and forth and both players kind of having to adjust and dealing with the nerves, while also keeping up a pretty good level.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And then the second set, I guess, also went to a tiebreak, but that actually wasn't a batch of straight holds, right?
Oh yeah, by
That
the
was
way, I
actually
also remember at
going
at set point in the first set tiebreak, Garcia came up with this really good second serve. Like, it was, and that was gutsy, because I thought, it seemed like whoever was, like, if we look at second serve points won, I really thought that that Garcia, that really what carried her in the end, because to win 9 out of 12 of her second serve points in that first set was huge. Iga was also pretty good as well, 6 out of 7. But both these players were doing really well to fend off these really good returns. And Garcia, like she hit a second serve almost 200 kilometers per hour on the set point, and Iga just barely managed to get her racket on it, and then it was
Yeah,
set over.
I'm watching that now, and indeed, yeah, second serve, that doesn't seem like a second serve. The highlights
No,
that I have here don't include her missed first serve, but I think they should have, they should
they
have
should
they
have,
should
yeah.
have shown that it was a second serve because
Yeah,
you
because I
can't
couldn't
tell it.
believe it. I was watching it live and I was thinking like that's a second serve. Whoa, because yeah, she normally didn't go that big on the second serves throughout that set, but I think in that moment she felt like she had to because yeah, Swiatek was on it. So yeah, I think that's mainly my analysis for the first set. Really, there wasn't that much between the two.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then actually Świątek starts the second set, well, almost starts the second set with a break, which I guess is a little forgotten because later on she had to fend off some, actual high pressure moments.
Yeah,
So I think it is, over time it has been a little forgotten that she actually led 4-1 in this set, and she was the
double
first one
break.
to
Yeah,
break.
yeah, double
Yeah,
break.
even double break. You're right, even double break. Yeah, Jesus,
Yeah,
that would have
I
been
mean I almost
a real like horrible loss for her, right? I mean,
yeah
if she loses that second set from 4-1 up, of course, losing to Garcia in free from that spot, that's absolutely fine. I mean, she's playing ridiculous tennis. But yeah, if she lost it from 4-1 up, that could have been a real hit to her confidence. And of course, then we never get Beijing, then we never end the WTA finals, from that point going into, all really sort of turning into Świątek's #1 campaign. So really, maybe this is one of the moments that we're looking at as like turning points, right? Of course, she led in that set, but well, she could have basically she turned like a very disappointing loss into one of the best wins of her season here. Because yeah, imagine if
yeah
she actually drops it here from 4-1, and I think it really could have been a big hit to her confidence, especially given the sort of moments that we had to that she had to fight through later. Like there's definitely the highlights that I have don't include this point, but there was this 5-6 15-30 point on her
oh
own
yeah
serve in
yeah
the
we'll,
second
we'll
set,
yeah
which
yeah
had like
we'll
superb point construction really, and the sort of controlled aggression, sustained hitting that she really needed to come up with in that moment. So yeah, that's actually pretty crazy that she led by a double break in this set in the first place. I forgot it was a double break.
Yeah, it was a double break, but I remember it being like, yeah, I remember it being a little misleading because I remember her actually like, I remember Garcia having some game points and chances to hold, and then, not really doing it. Her level dropping for a couple of points here and there, and it was one of those situations where like Swiatek kept her level up from the first set and was serving just as good, especially making first serves, coming up with good body serves. Um, Once in a while, getting punished for weaker second serves, but for the most part, her focus was pretty good. And then Garcia just taking those chances, but then immediately afterwards, kind of the reverse happened, and that's when we saw the second serve kind of
Yeah,
the second serve issues come in play because that's when she lost the double break lead. Was yeah, just missed way too many first serves. Like she was keeping that first serve percentage up so high at the start of the second set, and then it just dipped, and then it was yeah, it was trouble for her because at that point she's serving at 5-6, 15-30, which is where we get that really good point. Do you want to describe that point?
I wish I could remember it better. you know, I basically just
Well, I
remember
remember I remember
as
Garcia
that one
very
where
good.
Świątek like controls play really well, but
Yeah.
hits with a lot of margin and eventually just forces out an error. I think maybe to Garcia's backhand
Yes,
side.
kind of.
I,
So what I remember is it was a first serve, but Garcia was really aggressive on it, and she laces the return right at Swiatek's feet, and then but it's right down the middle. So Swiatek is forced to like kind of hit a backhand on her back foot, and then Garcia unloads on this forehand cross, but Iga this time is there with the running forehand, and she had to make it really good because it was basically cutting the sideline, and it was wide, and I was thinking, okay, she's probably going to play a defensive forehand here. Maybe go for the squash shot, maybe just loop the ball back in and then rely on her defense. And she actually didn't. She went for a really aggressive forehand cross, but it was controlled well with a lot of margin, pretty good footwork. She got her, yeah. her right foot around the ball enough, and she hit a winner cross court. So yeah, it was fighting fire with fire, but with a lot more margin, and actually like trusting it in that moment. So I thought that was huge because right on the next point after that, she has to hit a second serve, and her second serve points won in this set 2 for 10, and so the fact that she has to hit a second serve at 30 all while serving to stay in the match, and then she ends up winning that point, was
When did you last see
great.
that
So
1530 point, by the way?
I think I saw it in some. I remember seeing it in the highlights of this match, and I remember seeing it on Twitter. Like someone, like because
Okay.
everyone who was talking about this match that I saw, like Iga fans and other people, they were highlighting this point.
I'm just shocked you remembered that well, but yeah, maybe you saw it at some point. I don't know.
I think that's like the point
I-
that I remember the most in this match. Like everything else is a little fuzzy, but like that's the one that sticks out more.
Yeah, I
Like
guess
if
the
I think of this match
leader-
immediately, that's the first point I think of. Because
Yeah,
it was,
I do
yeah.
too, although I haven't seen it since actually watching the match. So I my recollection of
Yeah.
it, as you can
I
see,
think they
was-
should have
was-
it in the highlights. I'm not.
They should
Yeah,
have it, but they
should.
don't actually on the
They don't?
WTA
Wow.
or on the Canal
Okay, then it
Plus
must have been. It must have
highlights
been.
that I saw.
It must have been those Twitter people.
Yeah, must have been someone on Twitter. I've watched the WTA
Yeah.
highlights. They are 5 minutes, and there's also a Polish highlight video with 9:32, and that also doesn't include this
By
point.
the way,
It
that
only
is
includes one.
that is scandalous. They should absolutely have this point.
Yeah, although something that they did include, I think that the Polish highlights actually, is the amount of return winners that Garcia hits in this set. Coming back from the double breakdown, and
Yeah.
I mean, Świątek's second serve gets absolutely crashed here. Of
Yeah.
course, that has been an issue. That was how Garcia just totally demolished her in Warsaw in a way. I really remember that one thing that Świątek said later, that because they were practicing with each other at the beginning of the week, right, in Warsaw, not in Beijing, and she saw that Garcia was just crushing every single return and was destroying her serve, and she was like, nah, but she's not gonna do it in a match scenario.
Oh, wow.
Caroline Garcia can do it in a match scenario, and well, she was also doing it here as well. But yeah, that 5-6, 15-30 as a whole, not even only that point, but that comeback is really like absolutely massive, and maybe again one of the biggest actual moments of Świątek's season. Given what happened later and how she still hasn't lost, and that will hold up for like 20 days probably. Well, no, I mean, no, actually, it can hold up, all the way until Australia. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, but my goodness, once she got out of that game, like she then races to a 5-1 lead in the tiebreak. And so at this point, you're like, okay, yeah, that game was massive. This is probably going to go to a third set. And yeah, like this is set over. But then Garcia has other ideas. Actually starts playing really aggressive again. And from 5-1 to 5-all, I think she hit like 3 winners. And got both of her points. And actually there was this one shot, I think I want to say at 5-1, where Garcia came up with a really good like sort of touch shot at the net, and Swiatek is like racing for it, and she's trying to come up with a backhand pass, but Garcia recognizes that she's gonna hit a topspin backhand, and then she volleys it. I think I hope I'm remembering that right. I think so.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, that was in the highlights indeed. There was Świątek chasing it down, and then Garcia just cuts it off through the middle of the court. Yeah. Definitely.
And then at 4-5, I think at 4-5, Iga's second serve gets absolutely crushed. I think it was like a return winner or something like that, because I remember the commentators at the time going, "Oh wow!" and and it's like everyone saw that coming as soon as she hit the second serve. Because
as soon as she just rolls it back rolls it into the court, you know what's gonna happen. And indeed, I mean, Garcia just smashes it forehand for a forehand return winner cross court. And absolutely, like 5-1, that was the moment when you just thought, okay, this is going free. I can basically stop watching now. I'll be back in 10 minutes, but actually not.
And then,
so I guess
at 5-all, I actually thought Iga was in trouble again, because
she
at
dodged
5-all,
the bullet here again.
She did. She just survived, because at 5-all, like she hit a first serve, but I don't remember it. I think I remembered it not being a very good one. Like it was sort of there to be struck.
That point is not in
And
the highlights.
yeah, but I think Garcia just went after the return and missed it. That's probably why. It was just, it was an
That's
unforced
like
error because
60% of Caroline Garcia's points sometimes.
Yeah.
So it is possible.
Yeah, it is. So we saw that because, like, at that point I would have probably been like, no, just get into the rally, or do something. But yeah, I mean, Garcia, yeah, that's what we were mentioning about her, that she can be stubborn in a situation like that, and then
And maybe it's actually good for her. I mean, it's impossible to know, really, right? I mean, she with her playstyle, she kind of has to be like this, like no hesitation, regardless of what's happening. You go for it. You trust the process. Let's say.
yeah, for sure. But then at 5-6, kind of the reverse happened, which is that Garcia misses a first serve, and then Swiatek is just doesn't really even have to really go for a winner. She can just settle to play a long rally here, and just by long rally I mean like over 4 shots basically.
Yeah, I
So
think it was like
that's-
5-6 shots.
yeah.
Yeah.
So because there were actually very few of these type of longer rallies in this case, in this
Very
match.
few.
But when they did happen, they came at really important moments. So that's another thing, which is
And they usually didn't end well for Garcia, I guess.
no, they didn't. And Swiatek wanted to be in those because that's where she has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless it was like a point
good
like the
game
one you
plan.
mentioned at 5-1, where Garcia is at the net and it was a pretty long exchange. That, of course, is very different. But when they
But
were
it's
both
important for
staying
Iga when
on
she's
the back
in
court.
those rallies to hit with really good depth and length, because the moment she hits something short, that's when you risk something like that happening. That happened at 5-1, where Garcia just sort of dictates and is all on her terms. But yeah, overall in this set, it was pretty clean from both. Like, you look at the winners and unforced errors count for the set and the match, and every single set it was in the positive, except maybe in the third one for Garcia. But at least in the first two, it was fairly like it was very positive. But that's also the other thing is that Garcia was getting a lot of free points on her serve, aces. I think she had 16 for the match, but only 2 in the third set. So yeah.
It was much shorter after all. I mean, just 3 games, right, in the third set. So on Garcia's serve, I mean, so
Yeah.
that's very, very understandable. But yeah, certainly, I mean, the winner unforced error stats were pretty much off the charts there. I think even by the WTA standards, what I'm talking about is that the WTA statisticians usually like give you like 50 unforced errors or something like that. I mean, I don't know how they count it, but you see it all the time that there's matches where there's like 10 winners, 50 unforced, and it's not actually true, but you see these stats all the time. Here, both women obviously were very positive in terms of that ratio, and yeah, just the sort of tennis that they played, of course, it really accentuated that, and allowed them to just keep blasting the ball, and with a very, very positive stat line.
Yeah, and even if you take away the aces, like in the first set, I think it was 16 winners for Garcia, but 6 of them were aces, so 10 were either off the ground or at net. And just like if you take out the serve, it's still over 50% from the baseline and the net, and for both. So that's pretty good. It tells you it was serve dominated, but it also had a lot of good kind of shot making, cat and mouse points, like their rallies at some moments, although they were pretty rare. But now we get to this third set, and I still was not sure that Iga was going to run away with this match, because even though she'd won the second set, in her previous losses, we had kind of seen this before, where she would fight back, but then in the third set, she didn't fully trust it enough, and the opponent still kept up a pretty high level. So I still wasn't completely sure, because I remember thinking this in the Svitolina match at Wimbledon, that probably Iga is the favorite for the third set, and it just never panned out. And same thing in the Goff match in Cincinnati. Comes back, wins the second set, doesn't win the third. And then same in against Pegula. Actually, she was up 4-2 in the third, and she lost 16 of the next 19 points. So the famous Cotton Eye Joe match, of course. And then and then against Kudermetova as well, she won the second set 6-2, but none of us were really convinced by her level at all in that match. So yeah, this one I really wasn't sure, because Garcia was still keeping up a pretty high level, and I still kind of thought that third set would be tight.
Yeah, definitely. But she just like ran away with it super quickly. There was just this one moment, right, in the final game, essentially, where suddenly from 3 match points up, Garcia is back at it again. she's crashing returns again. She's just not giving Swiatek a chance for a brief moment. But I guess it never really felt scary, right? I mean, I remember just
No, I
watching that
didn't.
and thinking, yeah, I mean, even if Garcia wins this game, there's still going to be 3 more. So I wouldn't quite say that, Swiatek dodged the bullet here again. Probably not. Not to this extent.
But I mean, like before the set
um,
started, I just wasn't
was
sure if it was going to be like that.
I mean,
Before the set started, I was like,
how can you
yeah,
know?
it's
Yeah.
still, even though that was a momentum type of set where you just felt like it could carry over, there's still like this long break afterwards, and then Garcia, like the service game that she got broken when she double faulted on the break point. That's when I knew, okay, this is probably done, because then you started to see her level dip a little bit, and Swiatek was just maintaining it. Like Swiatek hit one unforced error in the third set, so that kind of tells you everything you need to know, because it was this. We saw that kind of continue. Like the third set, she hit one unforced error, and then according to the WTA, 2 in the golf match, or something like that, and then or was that the final? Yeah,
none against
none
in the first set and 2 in the second, right, against some son of ours, something like that. But it was more. It was like 4. But anyway, that was the efficient version.
So that's when we started to
super
see
clean tennis. Yeah, that we actually saw that until the end of the year, really.
Yeah,
she had a lot of matches like this where, especially the ones where she's not the one dictating for the most part, which this one, I guess, is also included in it. But of course, she was also fighting with Garcia, for that ability to control the points. But especially when she wasn't dictating, when she was playing someone like some Sondova in the final, or I don't know, even Sabalenka in the semis, or even Pegula in the final at at Cancun. That was really like the version of Swiatek that we started seeing around Beijing, who just doesn't miss. She hits with very decent margin, but still very aggressively. And just doesn't make any mistakes. And it's pretty hard to beat that woman. Let me tell you that.
Right. And I mean, all it really took was Garcia's first serve percentage dropping a little bit, and Swiatek, dominating on her second serve return. So that part really stood up, because Garcia was, I think, 1 for 7 on second serve points in that third set. And her first serve percentage dipped just a little bit. It was like 71 in the first set, 67 in the second, 63 in the third. So, just enough. And then, of course, she was also actually up 40-15 at 1-4. So it was 1-4, 40-15. And so you still thought, okay, it could be one break, maybe 6-3 if, Iga keeps holding, obviously. But yeah, once Iga was serving at 5-1, 40 love, that's when Garcia actually started lacing those returns, like you said, again. And it became more complicated, but I think Giga got it done on her 5th match point, and there were no break points in that game. So
by the way, is that a big, like, does this the fact that the third set was 6-1, does this fact hold back this match in terms of its position on the list, and in terms of its position among the other greats of the 2023 campaign?
Maybe a little bit, I would say, actually, looking back now, maybe a little, because I still think it was. You could also kind of look at it as like a one really good set, like sort of continuing that trend of Swiatek, like an individual really good set, and sometimes that can still be fun to watch, right? Versus it's like, sometimes like an individual great performance is better than like a match that may be lower in quality but higher in drama and tension. So it really kind of depends. I won't really hold it against anybody if they want to keep it lower for that reason, but I just think the first two, it was kind of inevitable, because the first two sets were so high quality that you were expecting a little bit of a dip. Like there just had to be one. So I mean, I still found it exciting to watch, even if it was 6-1. So
yeah, I will hold it back against you if you claim that this match is number 7 on the 2023 list. That's just ridiculous to me. But I'm actually fine, with it not being like number 1 or something. I think there are at least 2 or 3 others.
Yeah, it's just that you had a lot of other good
level.
contenders that were in majors. Like, you could look at, like, for example, Wimbledon was a very good tournament.
If these are your arguments, I'm fine with that. Personally, maybe it would be my number 1.
Sabalenka-Muchova match felt big in terms of the
Did
occasion.
that eventually
like,
make the
moment.
list? I think it did, right?
I think it did, and then obviously you have to have the Australian Open final in there. So then you're
Yeah.
just so then
Madrid
there's not
as well.
actually, Madrid final has to be there. So
yeah, so it's fine to have it at like 4. I would be fine with 4, but 7. Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, at least it's in the top 7. I can be glad that I managed to push it into the top 7. Jack did help, I have to say. Credit to him as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch this match, you would absolutely have it in there. Like I mean, the first 2 sets were some of the best tennis all year for sure, and even just sort of that start of the third set, and then towards the end of the second set, like at 1-4, there were some good points, and then even in the last game, it wasn't like it was just a complete rollover. So, yeah, it was definitely worthy of being on here. Worthy in terms of it being a narrative for set the tone for the whole year basically for her.
Yeah.
Then winning 7 matches in a row against high-level players, and Samsonova as well in the final. That was her second WTA 1000 final too, and she'd just beaten Rybakina the round before. And then it sort of set up this interesting triangle where it's like, Rybakina getting the better of Iga getting the better of Samsonova getting the better of Rybakina. So, yeah. And then we sort of saw the same in the WTA finals, but yeah, just the conditions being really good, and also for her playing in the wind.
That Beijing WTA finals double really like changed the whole perception outlook of Swiatek's season, and part of it was this match, how she had to respond.
Something about the Beijing quarterfinals being turning points on the men's and the women's side, obviously.
Because Sinner post-puke. I wanted to say earlier, I forgot that this is Swiatek's puking moment.
Yes.
Of course she didn't.
This is it.
She didn't actually puke, but it's more or less the same. Of course, she only had one more event after this. Sinner quite a lot more, but definitely there is a bit of a similarity for sure.
Because at this moment,
quarters.
At this moment, I would have comfortably said Sabalenka is the player of the year.
Yeah,
Sabalenka is the world number 1. Iga has to like come up with something really special, and then when she won this in the WTA finals, she kind of shut the case, in my opinion. So
Sabalenka was probably the best player of the year until they played in Cancun. But of course, we don't really get that without this win, because we don't get Swiatek fighting for number 1. Actually, you would still have Sabalenka there, so there would be another aspect in the conversation. So I mean, for her it was obviously massive, and Garcia still a very good result, and it allowed her to finish in the top 20, which gives you some sort of degree of stability. I think she actually, like, it might be like her 3rd top 20 finish, right, or something like that. I mean, even in the years between when she was in the top 10 and the previous season, she wasn't really finishing that high. I mean, she was sometimes even like around 50-ish. So it's really the first time in her career that she's shown this ability to repeat half of what she did in 2022, but still, I mean, to be around the top, to stay around the top.
I mean, she did maintain her top 10 position until until October. So
but like, that wasn't really because she did anything. Like, that was only because she had the results from last year. So.
From the previous year. And because she didn't do anything in the first half of 2022. So she just had to do a little bit better to maintain. So that's...
She actually was probably gaining even for the most part, despite not doing all that well in the first half of the year. But as a whole, it's still pretty a pretty big milestone for me in her career. I would say. Yeah,
for sure. And then the last set of this, plus the next 2 matches in Beijing, plus then the 5 in a row that she won to win Cancun, and she dropped 36 games, I want to say, or like 30 games in like basically 7.5 matches. So she just went on an absolute tear after that. So
Caroline Garcia can say that she's the last player to trouble Iga Swiatek.
Yep, and that would be accurate,
more or less. Yeah, I guess the other thing that troubled Iga Swiatek was the wind in the second set against Goff. But I can't with full honesty say that Goff troubled her So yeah,
well,
I
that
mean,
was an interesting moment because then Goff served 4 double faults to
yeah,
that second set, so it's
to
kind of
drop the
handed it
set,
back. Yeah,
to drop the serve, yeah. But yeah, still definitely one of the best matches of the season, one of the best matches of Swiatek's season. Garcia, maybe the best one that she played, and certainly a glimpse of what she can do at her best.
yeah. And I guess before we wrap this up, I put this poll up on Twitter, and I was curious to see
Mm-hmm.
what most people would say. Uh, I had this poll of like, what is the best Iga Swiatek fighting performance? And basically, I included 4 matches in there. So I included
What are
the
the odds? I
Bukova.
didn't vote in it, so I can just do it live.
So I voted for. Okay, that's good. I'll tell you what the results are after you get your vote in. But basically,
Yeah.
it was the Mukhova final in Roland Garros. It was the Beijing
Mm-hmm.
match against Garcia. It was
Mm-hmm.
Madrid against Alexandrova, and then Wimbledon against Bencic. So those were the 4 options.
Probably go for Wimbledon, maybe. Although Garcia, fine choice too.
That's what I would
I
have
personally
said too.
wouldn't go Muchova, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would go Garcia or Bencic. Probably Bencic. Which match won?
So 566 total votes. 58% of them was the Roland Garros final, which I was a little disappointed in because I thought there'd be more love for the Bencic match and maybe for the Garcia match
But
too.
you know, it's just because it's a Grand Slam final.
Yeah,
I saw
exactly.
this Twitter how do you call it, like a tournament of polls, let's say, done by, I think it was done by Out of Context Iga Świątek maybe, which was
Oh yeah,
literally
must
favorite
follow account
matches
by the
of
way.
Świątek 2023. I started following it because of this tournament, so yeah, I'm now a follower as well. But anyway, it was like a tournament starting from last 16 of Świątek's matches in 2023 among, I guess, Iga Świątek's fandom. And actually what also won it, and overwhelmingly, was Świątek Muchova. And the finalist was actually Swiatek Garcia. But I was also a little disappointed. I was like, really? That choke fest is your favorite match of the year? But I guess, especially for fans, winning a slam, that's something that really matters to them even more. Like the importance of the match, the meaning, the trophy that she got away with.
Sure.
Whereas for me, I guess I'm a lot more detached, and Swiatek Muchova is like probably, well, it's pretty high up for me, but it's not like one of her best 2-3 performances this year for me. So, but yeah, basically, it seems like that match has a lot of popularity in any poll like this.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of polls, now I'm remembering a conversation that I had with Anna Zofia about this actually underneath this this tweet, and we both said that we would vote for the Bencic one at Wimbledon just because we hadn't seen it on grass, and so for it to, for her to save those 2 match points and come back and win, and then win the third set. Of course, it didn't really have that much of an impact because it's not like Swiatek ended up winning the tournament after that, and
at the time we thought
that leaves
right.
That maybe leaves a slightly sour taste for that to be number 1. And then of course, like this being Roland Garros
if
final,
you like try to
Muchova.
treat it though, like if you try to look at it sort of separated from that and try to think about what it meant at the time during the match, I think for a lot of us it was like, oh, okay, now she can win the event.
Yeah.
So,
but there were so many moments like this at Wimbledon.
If you look at it like this,
there were so many moments at this, like at Wimbledon for the tournament as a whole. Like, if you thought that Pegula was going to beat Vondrousova, oh, maybe she can go and win the tournament. And then same with the Rybakina and Sabalenka, those matches against Jabeur. So there were so many of these sliding door sort of mini moments at Wimbledon this year, and this was just one of them. So
fair enough.
So yeah, but I guess anything else to add on this match?
Probably not. Good that it's here, number 7. Well, I'll live with that. And we had fun talking about it, even if my recollection of it apparently isn't as good as I hoped it would be. But still one of my favorite moments of this season for sure.
And yeah, I guess same here, and obviously the relevance still remains key for the time, and also just it being a no nonsense match like you described it. I think that's a pretty good summary of it from both players. And most of the time we had them both playing their best at the same time, or forced to come up with different solutions and in the big moments, and yeah, and then also narratively it bodes well. So I like that it was on the list, and yeah, it was fun to talk about it. And yeah, and I guess that's a wrap for number 7.